Thank you, Tess. Good morning, everybody. Great to see so many of you here today. For those of you who had expected to see Peter here this morning, you're in the right spot. He just unfortunately couldn't make it today, so I'm filling in for him. And while I, of course, can't replace him, I will do my best to keep the coughing to a minimum and the insights to a maximum. So let's see if that works. Yes, it does work. Now, before we're going to have a look at the latest stats of the industry, let me start with some of the factors that are currently influencing the sector. First, of course, the global macro factors. We are navigating a very complex environment at the moment with residual impact still from COVID-19, which has changed consumer behavior and business operations in ways that we're still trying to fully understand. There is geopolitical tensions like the war in Ukraine as well as in the Middle East, which is impacting global oil supply. Then there's the Chinese slower than expected recovery, which is impacting on export demand, together with various elections that have been taking place this year or will take place this year. So altogether, we have a recipe for a very dynamic and unpredictable economic environment. Inflation, of course, is still a hot topic, although the consumer price index has come down from its peak of 8%. It is still above the RBA's target range. So obviously, this means that cost of living is still a major concern for many households, especially as wage growth is still struggling to keep up with inflation. Interest rates, of course, we are now into the phase where the full impact of the rate rise increases are being felt by people. They're now adjusting to the new normal. In this scenario, there's winners and losers, of course. Savers are rejoicing, but borrowers are obviously feeling the pinch. Add to that the cost of doing business remains very high. Wages, material costs, operating costs are major contributors to that. Then there is also extreme weather events that are affecting the industry. We've seen, for example, in recent events like the cyclones in northern Australia over the summer months that have impacted caravan and camping activity in the affected areas. Now, while the RBA's interest rate cycle is taking full effect on households, we have to keep in mind that there is still a significant proportion of mortgages that will mature in 2024. And this, of course, will put more pressure on households and affect their spending behavior. Consumer confidence is another factor, important factor. We've seen that consumer confidence has been at recessionary levels for quite some time now. Current financial situation is a major concern for many households, especially as many have dipped into savings to manage the increasing cost of living. This has reduced the household saving ratio to levels that we haven't seen in many years.
Right.
The economic uncertainty is also affecting the sentiment, the confidence to buy a major household item. The index has been weak for quite some time, with reduced confidence in buying household items, including vehicles. We've seen a small dip before the end of financial year sales. However, since then, more Australians have said it's not a good time to purchase a big item. When it comes to spending, what we've seen is that consumers have become more cautious about their spending. They're really prioritizing essentials and cutting back on discretionary items. However, what we can see is that there's still Australians still have a desire to travel, with what we can see here on the screen, three 3/4 of Australians said in this survey from June that they're going to spend on travel in the next 3 months. So what we can really see is in the discretionary item category, people are going to cut back, for example, on meals or alcohol before they're going to touch their travel budgets. Of course, cost of living has been impacting spending, and compared to 2 years ago, the impact, of course, has increased. What we can see here in the graph is that more people are saying now that they would delay going traveling or purchasing a vehicle if cost of living was to rise, continue to rise. However, but we can also see that there's still a proportion of Australians that would not delay going traveling, even if cost of living was going to rise. So this shows that many people are still making room for travel, especially when they think that the price is right. In a survey in May, before the end of financial year sales, more people said that they were going to purchase travel in the end of financial year sales than compared to a year ago. This shows that people are looking for bargains before they actually spend. However, they're still prepared to spend. What we've seen with new car sales have remained very resilient, actually. So probably these purchases are driven by homeowners who have little or no debt and high savings that are benefiting from higher interest rates, and they have no problem spending their money. Now, with these conditions in mind, let's have a look at the performance of the caravan sector. Now, over the 12 months ending in May this year, there's been 29,100 recreational vehicles manufactured locally, and year to date we have about 10,400 units produced. Now, these numbers are down compared to last year. However, if we look at the numbers, we're still up significantly over 2019. So 25% up year ending May compared to 2019, and 16% up year to date compared to 2019. So we can see that manufacturing is still quite solid. So compared to 2023, we're down, but compared to 2019, 21, and even 22, we're actually still going strong. Looking at total production, the red line is caravans. So what we can see here again, there's been a drop in manufacturing since October last year. However, from October 2020, the production has skyrocketed really to unprecedented levels. So although there's been a softening in the market, we're still talking about very, very high numbers.
But they're fine. Good.
Motorized production a little bit different because we're talking about hundreds unit produced instead of thousands. And what we can see is that actually from the beginning of this year, the rolling annual numbers of C-Class and campervan units has actually increased. Moving on to imports. Now, since year ending May 2024, there's been about 23,000 caravan trailers imported into Australia, and year to date we have about 8,400. Now, year ending, this is a 1% decrease, and we've seen basically that since the end of last year, there's been a peak. Since then, the numbers have been falling. quick look at the domestic caravan and camping visitor economy performance. What you can see here is that trips and nights have been falling compared to last year. However, again, compared to 2019, we're way up. We're up 16% in trips and 8% in nights. So although we're seeing a softening in the market, we're still going quite strong. Now, with this in mind, let's have a look at an evidence-based outlook. First up, search interest in caravan and camping travel. What we can see on this screen is that, yes, search interest has reduced. However, it hasn't dropped off the way we've seen it at the beginning of the pandemic, where, nobody was really Googling for going caravan and traveling, obviously. So the demand is still quite strong. Same with interest in recreational vehicles. So we've seen, obviously there is a softening because of economic conditions. However, the fact that it hasn't dropped off a cliff is a good indication that once economic conditions improve, interest will come back. Another thing is that spending from younger demographics is really reduced. We've seen that they're focusing on essentials and not really spending on discretionary items. However, spending from older demographics, most likely those that have little or no debt and high savings, they're actually running ahead of inflation with their spending. So there's still pockets in the market that are willing, they have the money and they're willing to spend it. So the question is, how can we reach these consumers and motivate them to spend? Now, housing affordability can actually be a market opportunity for the caravan industry, in the sense that with the increase of housing prices, more and more Australians are willing to actually shift from traditional to more unconventional housing alternatives out of necessity. So in this survey from April, we can see that 1 in 4 Australians would actually consider buying a tiny house if house prices will continue to rise, and 12% are open to purchasing a caravan or RV to live in. Now, the tax cuts that have come into effect earlier this month, in our consumer sentiment survey that we're currently conducting among caravan and campers, we are asking them what they would do with the stage 3 tax cuts, what they would use them for. And what we've seen so far is that 9% are actually saying that they're going to add it to their travel budget. So that's a good indication that people are might actually be able to spend more on travel, or at least not delay traveling. In addition, there's also 2% that they're going to put it towards purchasing a vehicle. We also have asked current RV owners about their RVs, whether they're going, how likely they are to sell them or not. So what we're seeing here is that RV owners are actually feeling quite confident about their RVs. There's only 7% that said that they are likely to sell their RV and exit the market. So this means, on the other hand, that people are invested in the RV lifestyle and they're unlikely to exit the market. In fact, 14% said they might actually upgrade on their RV. So this is good news, because it means that there could be then flow-on effects into like buying accessories, services, and so forth. So a good opportunity for the industry to keep these customers. On the other hand, current non-RV owners, they are actually thinking about purchasing. But of course, if we look at the graphs at the time horizon when they're going to purchase, it's quite far into the future. So the challenge here would be like, how can we motivate them, or how can we get them to purchase earlier? But this shows that there's still people interested in purchasing a vehicle. So, yeah. So to wrap up, here are the key takeaways. Consumer sentiments towards purchasing RVs and caravan camping holidays remain strong, with both visitor and manufacturing numbers surpassing 2019 levels and actually remaining above the 10-year trend line. The economic conditions are complex and they will remain complex. However, businesses that keep innovating, which offer flexible pricing models and adopt a targeted approach, they will gain a competitive edge in this environment. The current economic climate is clearly influencing consumer behavior. The mortgage belt, mostly younger consumers, they have reduced discretionary spending capacity, while older markets are still spending confidently. However, also this demographic is also redirecting some of the spending towards high-end international travel, such as river cruising in Europe. So the question, the challenge here is, how can we get them to travel locally? Overall, the outlook remains softened over the next 12 months as inflation continues to come under control, with consumers now firmly cutting back on discretionary and travel spend as they manage cost of living pressures. However, there is an expectation that consumer sentiment in 2025 will turn positive as interest rates may begin to ease and the cost of living comes under control. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention today.